Hey, welcome to this week's Midweek Tip. So today I want to talk about the idea that what we expect forms our interpretation of what we experience. So in short, our perception is our reality. So what this statement is really saying is how we think about a particular event or something that we think is true, then we believe that to be true. I've often said that facts are never stronger than opinions. And this comes in many forms. And of course, in today's world, with the extreme media bias and a lot of the misinformation that we're getting, it's played out on the world stage, and we see it every single day on social media, on news channels, on comedians laugh about it, joke about it. It's a thing now that before it was just a perception of our reality on the small stuff. Now it's literally in our face on a large scale. But let's look at what this an alternative view of reality means in our everyday. How does our perception guiding what we are experiencing actually look like in our everyday world? Now, our expectations comes from many sources, okay? It's inputs in our daily lives. Now, this input, things that come into us from other sources, affects how we feel about food, culture, relationships, jobs, and just about everything in life. And for those people raised in an environment of dislike for another race or another culture, your belief system is imprinted that way. And sometimes it's really hard to change that. And the same goes for certain religious beliefs and practices. I was raised Christian. And for me, it would be very difficult, let me just say impossible, for someone to convince me to change from Christianity to be Muslim. My belief system is ingrained in Christianity, and you could never change my mind in that, right? So that's what I'm talking about, how our belief system ingrains us to see the world in a certain way. People can certainly change, and they can learn new ideas, but it takes relearning before the perception changes. So in this world, a lot of people won't take the time to relearn, so there is no perception change. So let's look at for a job. Let's say you're looking for a job. You decide to take a job at another agency because it has better pay, it has better location, but you do your due diligence and you research the agency before you actually accept a job. And you spoke with others who work there, listened to outside talk about how they interact with agencies. Maybe there's some media coverage about the agency working in high-profile cases and things like that. And all of these signs have given you the perception of what the job will be like because you've talked to people, you've read articles about them, and you feel like you know what the job is going to be. But then you arrive on the first day, boy, you're excited, you're ready to kick in, and you're honored to be given the opportunity to work for such a prestigious organization. But then in a few weeks, you learn that it's not all what you heard. Your perception, or the perception of others, formed a reality that wasn't true. Let me give you another way to look at this. The police department in your town, let's say they have 2 investigators, okay? Roughly the same age, the same amount of time on the job, and one stands out as really, really professional in his dress, his appearance. He's a poster child of what a real investigator should look like. His actions, his language, his appearance, his organization all stand out. Now, the other guy, and he's a bit overweight, he's a little bit sloppy, he's a little rough around the edges. Maybe his speech is a little rough around the edges. Maybe he says a curse word or two in public when he shouldn't. And when it comes to his mannerisms and his language, well, he just appears a little bit lazy. And that's our perception. He's just a little bit lazy. Just from the description of these 2 investigators, which one do you think does the best job and has the highest clearance rate? Now, of course, now that you're listening to me, you're probably going to think it's a trick question, and in a way it is. I obviously don't know the answer because I don't know either one of these 2 people. But many times we want to look at the one that's squared away, looks good, smells good, and acts good as being the better investigator, when in reality it might all just be window dressing, right? But our perception is our reality. Let's look at another example. Your daughter brings home a boy. He's clean-cut, well-groomed, excellent grades, good parents. He's from the good part of town. Great choice, right? Great guy, a captain of the baseball team or football team. Just a great, great guy. But what if she brought home an average-looking kid on the average side of town, wearing a nose ring? He has his wallet chain on, strapped to his belt, has on black jeans and black boots, and his father's not in the family. He's been raised by a single mom who has 4 other kids to look after. You excited about that? Excited about that boy? Well, which one's going to treat your daughter better? Now, we might think it's the one from good grades, good part of town, good family, but that isn't always the case. But we make assumptions. Well, especially those that have daughters, we make assumptions about people they're dating. And it is true that we don't want our children to be around people of bad influence. Kids that are getting in trouble, taking drugs, been arrested for stealing. We don't want our kids around those because that is bad influence. But without having those facts, we can make perception judgments. Now, here's my point. We all have biases, and we all look at situations in our lives from tinted glasses. The way our experiences will change the way we perceive things. And you have to know that that is true. These biases, these beliefs, they determine how we look at people. And if we're not careful, it can affect how we conduct our investigations. Because if we're looking at cultures, people, skin pigment, where they live, how they live, then we start sometimes putting our perceptions and our biases in our investigations in the way that we think about things, okay? So my advice is to look at each situation with an understanding that you have biases, how you were raised, the experiences you've had in life, and you have these. These are predetermined perceptions of people and situations. Now, it doesn't mean you're racist. It doesn't mean that you hate certain people, you hate certain groups, but there are biases there. Now, it doesn't mean that every one of the biases are bad, okay? You have biases against food. It doesn't mean it's bad. You have biases against the way people act. Doesn't mean it's bad. But understand that biases do exist. They can be bad. They can be okay. They can be good. But they can affect the way we do our job, and they do exist. You'll be able to take a step back and look more closely at the facts rather than the perception, and you will become a better investigator. So this will also make you a better human being. Understand that you have biases. Now, I do not believe in necessarily the whole implicit bias theory that is being pushed now, where just because I'm a white male, I'm absolutely racist against another culture. That is BS. I am not. And certainly not just because I'm a white male. Now, I certainly have biases. I have biases in all kinds of things, but not because of somebody's skin color. And so I'm not talking about that type of bias. I'm not talking about just because you are X, that means you have a bias against Y. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that in our life, the way we're raised, the areas that we're raised in, things that we do and believe are going to influence the way we live our lives. Because, again, our grandparents seen things different than we see things, and our children and grandchildren see things different than the way we see them. And so we're going to have different perceptions. So just understand that your perception of something determines your reality, and be careful, because sometimes facts doesn't change your opinion. If you're politically one way or the other, facts don't matter. If you're a far right or a far left, I can give you facts all day long, and you literally will not believe it. Let me give you an example, and I'll end with this. I have a gentleman in my church that is a staunch Democrat, which I'm not getting into politics, I'm just giving an example. Staunch Democrat, but hasn't voted a day in his life. He doesn't believe a Christian should vote. I don't understand that philosophy. He's an older gentleman, but he's a staunch Democrat. And we were talking one day in a group of people that he walked up into about the overarching agreement in the Democrat Party. They are pro-abortion. And then the overall arching agreement in the Republican Party, they are anti-abortion. Now, not a person, not a specific idea or thing, but overarching, national Democrats are more pro-abortion and Republicans are more anti-abortion. Broad brush, but that's true. This gentleman called us a liar and specifically told us it was the opposite. We knew it was the opposite. Democrats are anti-abortion, always have been, and the Republicans are the one pushing pro-abortion and late-term abortion. Now, we all know the reality is that is not true. However, his perception was that, and to him, that was his reality. So no amount of facts could ever change his mind. So remember, in your everyday life and in your investigation, you have opinions, you have biases, and those perceptions will help form your reality. So that's this week's Midweek Tip.